Hello. Hi. I'm Kathleen. I welcome Ella Shae. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good. Um, we want to start with what inspired you to write from broken to beautifully broken, and how does it reflect your personal journey?
From Broken to Beautifully Broken actually started as journal entries during my treatment at an eating disorder facility. Um, it was there that I realized a lot of the people that I was gathering with on a daily basis really did not want to open up and tell their story unless somebody understood or related to what they were talking about. So I wanted to create a book that sort of did the same thing for a wider audience, so all of my readers can read something about me, hopefully relate to it, and then that will help them to find the voice that they need to advocate for themselves.
Okay. Now, how do you believe this book can help readers who are going through similar mental health struggles?
Well, it shows the reader that you're not alone, first and foremost, and it normalizes, mental health struggles because more people suffer from mental health struggles than people who don't. And I think it's just still such a stigma and judgment associated with it that a lot of people just don't talk about it. So I think by talking about it, I create, the confidence in somebody to think that they're not alone and therefore they can get the help for themselves.
Okay. Now, you talk about changing the narrative of your life. Can you explain how readers can use that approach to overcome their own personal trauma?
Yes, it's all about changing your perspective, which will then change your mindset. So instead of looking at the things in your life that happened to you and saying, why me? Why did this happen? Kind of take a step back, change your perspective, and try to find a lesson or something you can pull from this time in your life rather than have it victimize you.
Right. Yeah. I get that personally because I've done that before. I've been in certain situations and then I'm like, okay, the only way I can change this situation is if I make certain changes. I have to change the situation. It's not just going to happen. If you want a different outcome for things, you have to approach things differently because what you're doing so far isn't working. So it's time to change the way you approach things.
Yeah, you have to take the control back. So as long as you can't control the things around you, you can only control the way you respond to them. So as long as you can figure out how your response to the situation is going to be, it can either turn out good or bad. So the power really does lie in your own hands. Sure, things are going to happen to us that are, not so great. We can't control that, but how we respond to it, how we can, change things from that point forward, what's the narrative.
Right. Now, the book does cover a wide range of topics like bullying, grief, mental health. Who do you think will benefit the most from reading it?
Everyone. So I've had I've actually had feedback from this book, because it was originally published a year ago. And I've had people from, 14, 15 years old up until, their late 70s who are emailing me, coming to my book signings. Everybody is relating to it in a different way because the stories are so common and they are so relatable that you can pull something from one of the stories. No matter how old you are, no matter what you're going through in life, there is something you are going to relate to in that book. And it's going to help you. Everyone I have spoken to thus far has said, this particular part helped me or this particular part helped me, so it really is for everyone.
What do you think is the most important piece of the book for you?
I think writing the book itself was very therapeutic for me, getting all of these thoughts out on paper that I never really spoke about before. I may have spoken about bits and pieces here and there, but to tell my whole story, from when I was 4 years old up until now, was never done before. So for me to tell that story, that was the most beneficial for me. But I think the book as a whole, bringing awareness to mental health and, normalizing it and ending the stigma is really the most important part to me, because all of the things that came in that book came from lack of mental health awareness.
Right. Yeah. My generation, it was never something that was discussed. You just stayed away from it. And I know you picked yourself up and you just dusted yourself off and kept going and ignored the problems and let them, just water off a duck's back.
Yeah.
It was ignored.
You just push it down and move on. And then
Right.
eventually you just overflow.
Yeah, you do. So now you do include a playlist for each chapter. Why was music so important in your healing process, and how do you hope it will impact your readers?
I think that music in general always is something that I turn to like heal my soul. Like no matter if I'm sad or depressed or mad, music always was able to bring me to like a safe space in my mind. Even when I'm happy, I choose certain songs for their lyrics or the tone of the music, the beat of the music goes along with your emotions for that day.
Right.
And I think that just like dancing in the kitchen with my kids sometimes is all it takes, those few moments a day of self-care and dancing, can change my whole mood for the whole entire day. So I just wanted to include music, one, because of that. And two, I chose specific songs by specific artists that would really encapsulate what I felt during that time. So some people can read it and really feel the way I felt, but then once some people listen to the music associated with it, that's when it really hits home for them, because maybe listening, to music is something that registers with them more so than reading it in a book.
Now, is there a particular group that you think your book will benefit the most?
I think young adults, I think college kids at the point where they're starting to create their own boundaries and starting their own life, to make sure that they're doing so in a healthy way. But I also think it helps, the mom, the dad, the parent, the caregiver. It really does give advice for so many people. I mean, I think that if I go back and look at the numbers, it's mostly appealing to people like in their, say, 20s to 40s. But it's definitely gone beyond those barriers, below
Right.
above. So,
Okay. So are there any other books in the future that you're looking to venture into besides this?
I'm still processing this one. So, it was one thing to write about it, and it's another thing to go places and talk about it and answer questions and do public speaking and continuously bring up these traumas from my past or life challenges from my past. So I'm still sort of, trying to sort all of that out. I don't think I'm ready just yet for another book. And I certainly hope I don't have enough traumas to create another book.
Right.
Right. So maybe something in the future, along different lines.
Yeah, because I was going to say, I mean, you could always go from a different perspective. I mean, since you have a now changed perspective, write it from a whole new one.
So the book actually is broken in half. So the first part of the chapter talks about the trauma or the life situation. And then the second part of the chapter talks about it, how I see it through the lens of empathy and how I changed my perspective and what I was able to pull out of it. So the book sort of does break it down into like then and now. But I actually considered, my daughter is 18. I actually considered having her write something like from her perspective as like seeing a mom go through things. So I don't know, maybe that's something we'll explore.
From a teenager's perspective
Mm-hmm.
of watching what happens to their parents.
Yeah, because mostly it's parents having to raise children. But then on the flip side of that, my daughter had to see me go into treatment for 4 months. And, she saw me, slowly deteriorating prior to that. So it would be interesting to see, she's read my book. It would be interesting to see like what her perspective was
Right.
being the child in the situation.
Right. Now, what is the key message that you want readers to take away from your book? Or is there a specific message?
Yeah, I like mental health is health. You cannot be physically healthy unless you have a healthy mind. And I think that sometimes that's a hard, thing to sell to people who don't physically see tests or test results in front of them.
Right.
Mental health is not necessarily a tangible thing. So not a lot of people really, believe in it like they do our other physical ailments. And so the message in my book is that mental health 100% is the same as any other, important health issue in your life. And taking care of your mental health is extremely important because without that, you can snowball into addictions and, abusive relationships. It just can snowball into so many issues if you don't have a healthy mind. So I think that's really my message.
Part of the whole thing is mind, body, and spirit, and you want to work on all of those. Now, in your book, do you have a particular spiritual path that you followed?
Honestly, it was really treatment that got me to realize, to address these traumas was okay. So it wasn't really a spiritual journey so much for me, more so that it was going back to these times in my life and knowing I had a support system. So the difference was this time I was able to revisit those wounds because I had people surrounding me who were giving me the support I needed. So I guess, not looking in a spiritual sense for support and guidance through this whole thing, I more so looked towards, the people who I now allowed in my life and the people who I, so-called say sat at my table.
Right.
Were a part of my tribe or whatever you want to say. Those were the people who helped me get through these things. And I now realize the importance of who is in my life and who is not and the role that they play.
Now, you mentioned before that you're still navigating the whole process with this book of, the signings and the touring and so forth. Now, are you finding it to be more therapeutic for your mental health to go through these processes from writing the book, or more challenging and a struggle to keep up with the journey that you've already been on?
I definitely think it's more challenging than I expected. Only because, again, I'm revisiting these things over in my, and then I have, young kids in college, I'm speaking at colleges and they're asking me questions and they're sort of hanging on to my answer as like guidance for their next step. So, it's, I don't want to say it's a lot of pressure, but yeah, it is challenging because what comes out of my mouth can affect, what their next move is. Oh, it definitely is more challenging. The therapeutic part of it is I've built a community. I have a support system that we do virtually during the week. And I created a support system. I've created a community. So that's the therapeutic part. But the talking and the interviews and, all of those things sometimes can be difficult when we get really deep into
Right.
of those traumas.
So you would say it's challenging because, you worked through these traumas and you thought, okay, I've dealt with them. I've figured them out. I've put them aside. But now because of having written the book and going into the interviews and so forth and the questions coming up about it, it's bringing it all back to the surface and having to relive it when you thought you'd put it away. Now you have to bring it back.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely difficult. And, in the end of the day, it's making me stronger each time because, the questions that people ask me, sometimes, I end the interview and I was like, oh, I never thought about it that way, and sometimes it does help me to move on a little bit better. But sometimes some of the questions leave me a little unsettled, and that's just what comes with what I chose to do. I have to do this, but I think, again, the most challenging part is making sure that I'm helping people in the right way. I want to make sure that my answers are helping them and not, possibly making things worse.
Right. Yeah, because you don't want to think about it like that. And you always want to think about that. You've inspired somebody or educated somebody enough that they make a better decision or know how to navigate a specific situation without falling apart.
Exactly. And I think that that's what I've been doing. But again, I never know. So
Well, Ella, I do appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us today. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
thank you. You also.
Bye bye.
Bye.